Are we right to go, Mr. Bird? Thank you very much. Good evening, councillors, and all of you other folk out there in Zoom land. It's a shame that we're actually having to do this. This was to be our first meeting with an open gallery. However, it's not the case tonight. Could I remind councillors and directors, please, phones on silent. Okay, so welcome to our regular Ordinary Council meeting, June the 1st, 2021. And I will ask Mr. Bird to read the following statement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All council meetings are filmed with both video and audio being recorded today on Zoom. This meeting is held online and audio and video is focused on councillors and council officers. Question time is still being held. However, questions are requested to be submitted prior to the meeting in writing. By submitting a question, you consent to your question being read aloud and recorded. In common with all narrative during council meetings, verbal responses to congratulations, obituaries and question time will not be recorded in the written minutes. The reasoning behind recording council meetings is, of course, to hold us more accountable and improve transparency of council's decision making to our community. The full meeting is being streamed live on council's YouTube channel, which is Alpine Shire Council, and will also be available on the YouTube channel shortly after this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Bird. The Alpine Shire Council acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land we are now on, and we pay our respect to their elders past and present. We also acknowledge those people who have contributed to the rich fabric of our community and strive to make wise decisions that will improve the quality of life for all. Confirmation of minutes. Recommendation of the minutes of the Ordinary Council meeting M5 held on the 4th of May 2021 as circulated be confirmed. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? You can raise your hand. Charlie, Councillor Vincent, thank you. And seconder, Councillor Janice. Those in favour, any comment?
No comment, thank you.
Thank you. Those in favour, carried. Apologies and leave of absence. Now I'll read around my screen. Councillor Janice. No. Sorry, no apologies tonight. I will rephrase this. Is there a leave of absence to be? Thank you, Councillor Prime.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I'll just get up what I've written. So, Mr. Mayor, CEO and fellow councillors, I wish for it to be noted that I intend to take a leave of absence from Wednesday, the 2nd of June until July this year. All things considered at this stage, it's my intention to be present at the July Ordinary Council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Prime. So noted, I believe. Everyone's smiling. That's good. All right, now we'll do the obituaries and congratulations. Councillor Janice.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to acknowledge the passing of Mr. Jerry Smith, the former CEO of Indigo Shire, who us older councillors had the privilege of working with. He passed away after an illness just very recently, and he was a valued and collaborative member of our Hume region CEOs. And then he went to work with local government Victoria in the IT sector. So after an illness, he has passed away, and I want to pass our condolences to the councillors at Indigo and certainly to his family.
Thank you, Councillor Janice. Councillor Chalwell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wanting to point out and say congratulations to a Paul resident. Rosie Spicer actually entered the Ultraman Oz race in Noosa earlier in May, and she has smashed the world record that hasn't been beaten in 30 years for her age group between 60 and 69. She did more than I think my body could endure. She did a 10-kilometre swim, followed by a 140-kilometre bike ride on day one. Day two was then spent on the bike for another 281 kilometres. And then day three was a run of 84.3 kilometres. So she broke that world record by 2 hours and 35 minutes. So I think that's just something outstanding. You know, from a small town, I see them run past my house training, and this woman is just fantastic. So congratulations to Rosie.
Thank you. I think congratulations all round, especially from the Alpine Shire, definitely. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a congratulations to the members selected for the community panel and a thank you to them. Yeah, it sounds so far that it's just a fantastic group of 43 individuals from across the Shire, and yeah, fantastic that you've put your hand up to be involved, and so far it sounds like you've already given such a wonderful contribution. So just congratulations to those people. Thank you.
My understanding is they'll be in place for 2 years, so we'll hear from them, I think, continuously. Very good. Councillor Nicholas.
Nothing to add today.
Thank you. Councillor Keeble.
To add from me either. Thank you.
Cheers. And Councillor Prime.
No, nothing from me, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Move on to a declaration by councillors of any conflicts of interest. Councillor Chalwell, you have a conflict of interest?
Yes, I have a conflict of interest for item 8.2.7. So I'll be stepping up for that one. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll note that. Now, public questions. Item 7 on our agenda. Again, I apologise. I apologise that we're not actually meeting in chamber and that you can't present your questions in person tonight. There are quite a few questions on notice tonight. People who do submit questions, the basic rules behind these are we limit people to 2 questions. So there may be, and if there are questions that are of a similar nature, I will hopefully encapsulate those into a single question and get the response to you. Now, there's a lot on our agenda tonight, so please bear with us after these questions while we conduct the normal business of council. Question number 1 tonight is from Glenn and Matthew O'Connell. Do council believe that enough information, adequate compliance measures and administrative processes to make a decision on a proposed 50-year quarry development in the foreground of Mount Buffalo, a declared significant landscape? So it's basically, do council believe we have enough information? I'll hand over to, and sorry, you'll see on your screens as well, you'll see the CEO, Mr. Charlie Bird, Director of Assets, Mr. Will Germany, and the Director of Commercial, Ruth Nebo. Could I please have Ruth answer this one, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The response to the question is the Planning Department is satisfied that the proposed condition set represents best practice and that they are suitably targeted for the proposed development and site specifics. The best practice conditions are appropriate for the life of the resources extraction, which, if approved, could operate at differing extraction speeds within the conditioned allowances.
Thank you, Ms. Kneeburn. Question 2 comes from Rosie Fletcher, and it's relating to the Great Valley Trail alignment, which is item 8.1.4 on our agenda tonight. Question 1, given that the officer report clearly states that the finance and resource implications of our proposed alternative alignment are minor and that it impacts on amenity, flooding and the environment are likely to be acceptable, is council prepared to further defer consideration of this section of the trail to allow further detailed investigations to occur in relation to the alternative alignment, including measures to address concerns raised by the single objector? Rosie, can I answer you in this way? Item 8.1.4 is going to be the alignment of this trail, and councillors will address this issue, I think, when we actually bring this item up in the normal process of the meeting. Question 2, however, unlike other sections of the proposed trail on Crown land, why is the alignment of the proposed trail shown with a minimal buffer or separation from our private property? And why is council not prepared to consider an alternative alignment to provide better separation consistent with the treatment given to other properties. I believe Director of Assets, Mr. Jeremy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So prior to an objection being lodged by one of the co-owners, we'd had conversations with the other co-owner where we raised the opportunity to move the trail away from the fence line and to provide some vegetation as screening in that location. And that's certainly an option that we still have on the table and something we're willing to do. So in the proposed alignment, there is the opportunity to move that trail a distance away from the fence line and to provide some vegetation screening there. So general comment, so we've taken a consistent approach. The 16 kilometres of trail that's being delivered as part of the Great Valley Trail, we've taken a consistent approach. We've run the trail alongside the river wherever we've been able to. We haven't been able to because we haven't had sufficient public land to be able to sensibly run a trail. Then there are areas where we've been forced to move away from the river, but largely where we've been able to, we have run the trail along the river.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Moving on to question 3 tonight. This is from Jean-Pierre Ronco. Background. Once again, our Alpine community is facing a COVID-19 outbreak in Victoria State and its consequences and restrictions. The question is the Alpine Shire Council, will they continue supporting our community by extending all the support provided in the 2021 budget? And has this support been reflected in the 21-22 budget? I believe Director of Commercial, Ms. Kneebone, has some response here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are some programs that will carry over from the 2021 budget into 21-22, and Council will also maintain its advocacy and support role to the community, liaising with state government departments through industry and sector special interest groups, and we will pass on any benefits provided from state and federal governments to our community. I'm not sure, Will, would you like to speak about any specific projects that are continuing?
Thank you, Ruth. So we do have resources which are budgeted to continue into the next financial year, which relate to community and social isolation support. And also recently we received some additional funding for a COVID business concierge to assist our business community. So we will continue through to late November to continue to deliver programs based on the funding that we've received to assist our communities.
Thank you, directors. Appreciate that. Question 4. I'll read out the background to this before the question. The council, applicant, Punky River Rocks Proprietary Limited, or applicants' consultants have avoided real-time dust monitoring in their planning application as they are aware of a long-term effect dust may have on the residents of Wallace Drive. This is to do with the development in Paulpunka of a quarry site. Dust monitoring during summer conditions are requested in the consultation process with Mountain Planning, who represented the applicant, but they refused to conduct monitoring, nor was real-time dust monitoring not mentioned in the planning application or by the applicant's expert consultants who performed the risk assessment. The EPA has advised the Alpine Planning Department that dust must not be allowed to leave the perimeters of the quarry. Therefore, for compliance, real-time dust monitors would need to be set up to measure dust exposure levels, facets of the full quarry. This question comes from Mr. Ray Bollis. The question is, why has the council not insisted the applicant provide real-time dust monitoring data before considering granting a permit to establish possible harmful elements in the dust from the quarry, especially when dust levels are more than likely to become worse with the introduction of large mining equipment to be used on the proposed quarry expansion? I believe that's, again, Mr. Kneebone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The response to the question is that the risk assessment conducted by Earth Resources as a part of their assessment concluded that the development was a medium risk and therefore dust monitoring wasn't a requirement. Appropriate dust management conditions have been included in Council's recommendation that will be in addition to dust management conditions included in any work authority approved by Earth Resources. As part of any future compliance action, should dust mitigation not be appropriately achieved, the operator can be required to undertake dust monitoring.
Thank you. Question 5, or letter 5, which has 2 questions and 2 parts. This is from the Pascoes, also of the Buckland Valley. The background, landscape impacts. Council's report acknowledges that there will be visual impacts from the expansion of the quarry beyond the existing footprint, which is screened behind a perimeter row of pine trees. Proposed permit condition 28 and is also covered under permit condition 29, currently worded, requires a landscaping plan that includes a relatively narrow but dense perimeter landscaping buffer, minimum 6 metres wide and 5 rows, be approved prior to commencement of stage 1. It does not, however, specifically require that this perimeter screening be established. Could condition 28 please be strengthened to require that vegetation screening be sufficiently developed to effectively screen any areas that are planned to be worked from surrounding public vantage points, such as the Buckland Valley Road, and prior to the commencement of each stage moving forward. Again, I believe, Ms. Kneebone.
So whilst the question relates to condition 28, condition 29 requires the landscaping works that will be shown on the approved landscaping plan to be completed before the commencement of stage 1B. So that there is a catch in the second condition in relation to landscaping.
Thank you. The second question from Mr. Pascoe is expansion to the south. Figures 2 and 3 in Council's report on the planning application include a red line delineating the subject land that includes an area to the south of the existing quarry footprint. We have been advised by Council staff and the proponents that they do not intend extending the quarry to the south in the direction of Wallace Drive. Question, we therefore ask if areas south of the existing quarry footprint could be clearly excluded from any permit council issues. Again, Ms. Kneebone.
Yes, so that is correct. The figures maps 2 and 3 in the report are at a very high level and the line is incorrect. It is too far south on those diagrams. So the documentation submitted with the planning application and also on figure 1 on page 61 does show the correct area. So the questioner is correct that the line is in the incorrect place.
Thank you, and that will be fixed in the actual application?
Yes, it's correct in the application.
Thank you very much. Question 6 is from Mr. Adam Bolus. This is a general overarching question, I believe, too. In 2020, the council held a meeting at the council offices re the quarry. I'm assuming this was a planning forum. A resident asked the council senior officer, why hasn't the council implemented all the recommendations, followed up actions, contacted the relevant authorities to carry out inspections on actions as directed by VCAT 10 years ago? And the response by the council officer was as follows. The council does not have the expertise or resources or funds to implement the actions. So the question is, what is going to be different now by allowing the quarry to extend? Again, Ms. Thebo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So council has improved its resources in relation to compliance, and should any future compliance action be required with the stone extraction development, such as what is being considered and is also currently occurring on site under existing approvals, both council's newly acquired compliance officer and Earth Resources compliance officers will attend to the issues.
Thank you. I hope that answers the question, Mr. Bowles. Letter 7 is from Robin Carter, and it relates to the stone extraction proposal as well. Robin, you have got 3 questions here. Your third question, progressive rehabilitation, I think has been covered in a previous question. So I'll read out the other 2 questions. Question 1, the quarry's current planning permit, dated the 25th of September 2018, has operating hours commencing at 8 a.m. 6 days a week. The new permit has operating hours commencing at 7 a.m, 6 days a week. This seems excessively early. Question, given that the residents of Wallace Drive can hear the quarry's operations from their bedrooms, could the Monday to Saturday operating hours please be changed back to an 8 a.m. commencement? Do we have an answer for this at the moment, Ms. Kneebone, or not?
No, we don't, other than the fact that it wasn't mentioned in the planning forum meeting as an issue. So the planning department recommendation regarding the operating times could be varied by councillors during their decision making if they choose to, but it hasn't come up in the planning deliberations and planning forums to date.
Right. Could I suggest possibly that this question will come up in item 8.2.9 when councillors do actually consider the recommendations? We might shelve that one till then. On the other question though, size, the area of the existing quarry workings is 3.4 hectares. The new proposal is for a 22.2 hectare, which is a 6 to 7-fold increase. It has taken over 10 years to extract the available resource from the initial 3.4 hectares, and council's reports states that extraction is proposed to continue at a similar rate. Question, is council satisfied that the expanded quarry's lifespan will only be 20 to 30 years as advised in council's report, or that the average number of truckloads will only be 2 per day? Do you have an answer on that one, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The application details an estimation of the extraction lifespan. Regulations don't permit an expiry date for earth resource extractions unless it is suggested by the operator. So, as no expiry has been suggested and it is accepted that extraction rates may vary over time, it's accepted that the proposed use could exceed 30 years. It should be noted that if the development proceeds, it doesn't continually grow over time, but rather progressively moves and is rehabilitated in accordance with requirements. So as a new area is opened, the section that's been closed is required to be rehabilitated behind it.
Thank you, Ms. Kneebone. Thinking further forward, and that is if we remain in lockdown for an extended period of time now, and I haven't read anything today, and or the state government changed the rules, then I have a feeling that we may be back in a situation where we have to socially distance at future council meetings, especially possibly for the July one. And if that is the case and people do have questions, please, the format is to submit them, and earlier rather than later, and 2 questions per person, relevant, and these have all been relevant tonight, and I thank everybody who has submitted questions, and hopefully you've had some answers tonight. There's still a few questions which we will get to in the normal course of our meeting. Item 8.1, presentation of reports by officers. Director of Assets, Mr. Will Jeremy, the transfer station loader renewal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report relates to the award of a contract for the supply and delivery of an articulated wheel loader for the Myrtleford transfer station. So a loader has been in use at the Myrtleford transfer station and it's now 14 years old. So in the adopted 2021 budget, we've got provision there for replacement of the loader. We've been out to a public tender and we received 3 submissions, and we've evaluated those submissions and arrived at a recommendation. One issue to note is that the existing loader at the Myrtleford transfer station had suffered a significant breakdown in March and it remains unserviceable. So that was the hydraulic pump that's failed. It's an expensive item to repair relative to the value of the loader. So at this stage, the team has elected to hire a machine. It's more cost effective at this stage to hire a machine than it is to repair the loader that exists. The costs of the hire have been taken into account in considering the 3 submissions that were received. So one of the submissions had a very long lead time because it was a piece of equipment that was coming in from overseas. So that cost has been taken into account, and the teams carried out the assessment and arrived at a recommendation to award a contract for the supply and delivery of a new Caterpillar 914 compact wheel loader to William Adams with a lump sum price of $188,012.36. And one thing I will note is that the existing bucket on the transfer station loader in the Myrtleford transfer station, that will be transferred and it will be used on this new piece of plant.
Could I have a mover?
So moved. I'll move that one, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Janis, and a seconder, please.
Sarah.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Janis.
Yeah, I had an affiliation with the old Volvo out there. Got my licence on it. It's had a hard life. And I know, doing a little bit of research, that a similar loader, second-hand, with 6,000 hours on it, would probably cost us at least $138,000. So to get a new loader in good condition, and I'm sure it'll be well looked after by the staff there, and it could be used in multiple sites, is the correct business decision for us to make.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas.
I have a question. What's the expected length of useful life? We're replacing one that's 14 years old. What do we expect this one? Similar sort of length?
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. So typically for this kind of plant, we'll be looking at around the 8 to 10 year mark. We will be assessing what kind of condition that piece of plant is. And we typically at that point, year on year, we will then look at how it's performing. We'll look at the cost of maintenance and see whether there's a trending increase in the cost of maintenance. And we'll establish at what point it makes the most economic sense for us to replace that machine. So it could be any point upwards from 8 to 10 years.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Any other comments by councillors? No, thank you. Yes, Councillor Keeble.
Other than to say the length of the time of it would be depending on whether Councillor Janis drives it.
Well said. And my question to you, Mr. Jeremy, is what warranty does it come with?
I will have to take that on notice, Mr. Mayor. So it is certainly a consideration in the evaluation of the tenders. I just don't know off the top of my head what this particular machine comes with.
All right, 10 years and unlimited hours, one would hope.
So my expectation is it was probably 3 years, but I'd like to be able to confirm that outside of this meeting, if that's possible.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's move on. So those in favour of the recommendation, please. Thank you. That's been carried. Right, item 8.1.2, the Economic Development Strategy. Mr. Jeremy again, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report relates to the adoption of the Alpine Shire Economic Development Strategy and the actions which are to follow the adoption of the strategy. We commenced the journey of developing the Economic Development Strategy just under 12 months ago, and I've outlined in the report the significant engagement that's been carried out with the community over that journey. So there've been quite a number of touch points with both individuals, with groups, with the councillors, as we've worked towards the final version of this document. In April 2021, you'll remember we came to the council meeting with a draft version of the document, the Economic Development Strategy, and council adopted a recommendation to place this on public exhibition. So this was exhibited for 28 days. We advertised this broadly and we sought feedback, and we received a number of submissions. And we worked through those submissions and addressed the comments that have been received on the strategy. Each of the parties who's provided us with a submission has now had a response back explaining how their submission's been addressed. And we're now at a position where we're recommending that council adopts the Economic Development Strategy. We have had some recent feedback from one of the councillors, some amendments. So there's some spelling mistakes, minor amendments, and some clarifications. So what we're proposing is to amend the recommendation that's in the draft report to say, council adopts the Alpine Shire Economic Development Strategy subject to the incorporation of minor corrections and clarifications. So that's the first recommendation. We're also proposing with the second recommendation, council develops an action plan to be finalised by 31st of July 2021 and addressing the key themes, strategies and opportunities identified in the strategy, and the final recommendation to remain unchanged.
Thank you. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Chalwell, and who's seconding? Councillor Vincent. Thank you. Councillor Chalwell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this process from start to finish has been an excellent learning curve for us. I'm not going to speak on behalf of the others, but jumping into council in my first term, you know, this is one of the major projects that has been put on the table, and everything was put out on the table. Everything was discussed. Nothing was unheard. The community feedback has been fantastic. So that to me is saying that our consultation processes are working because we are getting that feedback. It's all been taken on board, and I think having something like this adopted, especially in recent times, is a really good step forward for the future. So I'm excited to see where this can take us next.
Thanks, Councillor Chalwell. Councillor Vincent, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Chalwell covered most of what I had to say about the comprehensive engagement and internal discussion that we've had and many deliberations over it. And I think the development of that action plan, as Mr. Jeremy was saying about point 2, is absolutely key. And that was something I needed to get my head around, that it is a strategic document and there's so much that then flows on from that. But I think that where the council has gotten to is a really great place with all of that engagement. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Any other councillors like to make comments? Councillor Janus.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is a great document that's been produced. There's a lot of work and research gone into that. There's a lot of statistics in it. I suppose my only comment, which may or may not seem adverse, but in the agricultural side of things, the production of hops in our area and its continued growth is of great value to us. When we talk about our involvement with tourism industry and the hospitality industry, we must never forget our agricultural industries. And the hops industry and what's been invested in our shire in that is of great significance. And, you know, just in the Mariang area alone, that company has invested, $30 million in a new plant and jobs for our people. So, but this document is a good document. It's a good read, and I suggest people, if they want to have an involvement with our economic development going forward, have a good read of that and make some comment or suggestions as well too. We can always refine things. That's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Janus. Any other councillors? Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The economic strategy, started last year with the previous council. I think it was maybe August or September, something like that, or probably even a little earlier. So just for, all our residents out there, this process does take some time, though, it goes pretty quick, especially when you have an election and you've got lockdowns and all sorts of things that go on. But it's a live document. It's there to help us in the next couple of years. And just like Councillor Janice said, that, we will add to it from time to time, no doubt, as we go along. And thanks to everyone who has partaken in providing feedback. Thank you.
Councillor Nicholas.
Yeah. I just wanted to follow up on the consultation side of things, because I think that what the documents come up with is a really good attempt at balancing what we hear around the community about livability and visitors and agriculture, all of those things being a really important part of the Alpine Shire and its way forward. So, as others have said, grab the document, have a look at it, and watch us unroll it through the action plan, and support through that would be great from businesses and community members as well.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Mr. Jeremy, is the document available on the Alpine Shire website.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The document will be available post-adoption. So at the moment it's available as part of the agenda for the meeting, but it'll be
Thank you.
on the website after the meeting.
Thank you. All right. Councillor Chalwell, any more to add? Thank you. I put this to the vote. Those in favour of this, please. The recommendation. That's been carried. Thank you very much. Item 8.1.3, Road Management Plan 2021 version 5. Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to present the Road Management Plan 2021 for adoption by Council. Brief bit of background. So we've had a road management plan since 2004 when the requirement was introduced in the Road Management Act. Every 4 years, we're required to review and update the road management plan through a formal process that's outlined in some road management regulations. Through that process, and what we've established through that process is that there's no significant or substantial change required to the document. So we have done some cosmetic formatting to move into Council's new style guide, but essentially the content of the plan remains exactly the same. And on that basis, we're not required under the regulations to advertise that for public comment. So essentially, we're presenting to you here Road Management Plan 2021 for adoption with no significant or noticeable changes since the previous version, except for that cosmetic formatting.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Thank you, Councillor Janus. Seconder. Councillor Prime. Councillor Janus, anything to add, please?
No, not a lot. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's part of our day-to-day business of council, roads, rates and rubbish. On our community surveys, we've come up pretty well on our roads and road maintenance programs that we endure. And I suppose reading the report, I've highlighted here that the road management plan sets out broad management systems and standards for the inspection, maintenance and repairs of public roads. It's an important document to provide road authorities with a statutory defence against litigation, provided they can demonstrate compliance with the adopted plan. And we do live in a world of litigation these days as well. But nevertheless, our first and foremost priority is the safety of the public and providing appropriate road services, etc. So, and this is what this plan aims to do.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Prime, you live on a country road?
That is correct. In a similar vein to Councillor Janus, I completely agree. It might not seem like a very important document from just looking at it, but it's actually extremely important when it comes to community safety and litigation, like everything that Councillor Janus mentioned.
Thank you, Councillor Prime. Any other councillors? Councillor Nicholas?
The subject of road maintenance came up in the Audit and Risk Committee recently because there'd been some Victoria and Auditor General assessment across the state. And in that meeting, our independent Audit and Risk Committee members were really supportive of the road management plan that we have in place and the process that we have around road management. So I think it's really commendable that we get that sort of support from external eyes looking at the report as well, the plan.
Excellent. Thank you for that feedback. Anybody else like to make a comment? Pass back to Councillor Janus. Anything, Ed?
No, nothing further.
Thank you. Can I put that to the vote, please? All those in favour of this recommendation? Thank you. That's been carried. Item 8.1.4, the Great Valley Trail Alignment. Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report relates to the alignment of the Great Valley Trail between Germantown and Stony Creek, which is a Harrietville trout farm. So it's been a long-held community aspiration to connect Bright and Harrietville with a shared trail. That partially achieved following funding in 2013, which allowed a 5 kilometre section at the Harriettville end and a 5.5 kilometre section at the Bright end to be completed. But the link in the middle has been missing since then, and we've had strong advocates within the community who've been pushing for this to be completed. So we were successful in securing significant funding from the Australian government, and as I've noted in the report, we've been successful in topping that up with additional funding. So what I've outlined in this report is an extensive community engagement process that we went through around the alignment of the trail. That was carried out back in August, September last year. And then in April this year, we received an objection from one of the adjacent landowners. So this is a co-owner of a parcel of land that is adjacent to the proposed trail alignment. So we received an objection to the proposed alignment and a recommendation or request that we consider an alternative alignment. So the report tonight, a lot of the report relates to an assessment that we've carried out in that location of the proposed alignment versus this alternative alignment that's been put forward for us to consider. I've outlined in the report each of the different considerations that we've had to take into account, but I think I'll touch on 3 here, which are probably the key points. So both trails run entirely on public land. So the proposed alignment and the alternative alignment are entirely on Crown land, and we have the support of the Crown Land Manager, which is dealt for us to run the trail along either of those alignments. I guess the key points of difference between the two, one of the significant points of feedback that we received from the community during our engagement was that it was important to the community that we ran the trail along the river where we're able to. So the community saw that as offering the highest value location for the trail to run. So they requested close to the trail where possible and definitely away from the Great Alpine Road and the noise and the amenity impact of actually running it on the road. So those are the key principles that we used when assessing the alignment of the trail, and that's what we've done in this location. We've also got very strong support from the 2 public land managers, so NECMA and DELP are very strongly supportive of having the trail run essentially along the Riverside Reserve, because that provides them with an opportunity to work with council to essentially improve that streamside environment. So that's things like removing blackberries, removing woody willows and other species, and actually returning the riverside back to its kind of native environment. So they see that as a real opportunity. The other point of difference between the proposed and the alternative alignment that I'd like to flag is, so we've got an objection at the moment on the table from a co-owner of the adjacent land on the basis of the impact on their amenity. If we were to relocate it to the alternative alignment, we would then swap for an objection from an adjacent landholder who actually lives on the property. So they have a dwelling on the property, and if we were to move to the alternative alignment, we bring the trail closer to their property, and they've already advised that if that was to happen, they would formally object to that. So I guess those are the points of difference. To summarize, either trail can be delivered, either alignment can be delivered. They're both technically achievable. They're both on public land. We've carried out what we believe to be a fair assessment of the 2 alternatives. And I've outlined there, what I believe to be the key differences which work in favour of the proposed over the alternative alignment. So if I take you to the recommendation tonight is that council adopts the proposed alignment of the Great Valley Trail as shown in the attachment to the report, and that we advise the proponent of the alternative alignment for a section of the Smoko of the decision that council made this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this recommendation, please? Thank you, Councillor Keeble. And seconder for this, Councillor Chalwell. Thank you. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The Great Valley Trail alignment. This project has been on the table We've been talking about this trail for a long time on council, and we've been very fortunate with the funding we have received. And, I know not all trails like this, not all landowners are joining the trails are amenable to the trail, because it's different to what we're all used to. And certainly there's, in this case, there's been, a look at one of the areas for some realignment. I'm comfortable with where the suggested trail is on the current maps. And I understand that may not always be amenable to some people, but I'm comfortable with the thinking behind where the trail is, and I hear that the Director of Assets, Jeremy, mentioning earlier that some screening will be done in regards to some of the trail where it is along near the river. I'll leave it at that at the moment. I'll leave it to my fellow councillors to comment.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Chalwell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is, you know, when we get objections and things like that coming in on applications and projects that are happening, it's taken seriously. Each section is broken down as to what would be the best thing, and hours of research and changes and alternatives and things like that is put into it. So it's not a decision that councillors take lightly. It is taken into consideration on both angles. Obviously, it's been explained here that there would be an objection either side. So what we've done essentially is looked at the alternatives versus the proposed, weighed up the options, and essentially put forward the recommendation that would best suit. And as it has been explained, there will be vegetation and things like that placed around areas where this might be impacting the current landowner. So hours have been put into it. It's not a decision taken lightly, but that's where it stands for myself.
Thanks, Councillor Chalwell. Would anybody else like to comment on this? Councillor Janus.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I have had conversation with both sides of the both parties in relation to this, and I've had a good look at the mapping involved. I'm comfortable that I've got all the information that I require, although I hadn't been on ground in that area per se. I've got a reasonable indication of what that type of country is like, no matter where that trail may or may not go. It could well be subject to some inundation anyway, because the alternate route follows an old riverbed, and being in a valley, you know, in areas of high water, high flood, there's a lot of sections going to get inundated. So the area that's proposed, it did have, has had a lot of woolly weed and willow, and you know, it's an unloved piece of land. This is an opportunity to environmentally to make a bit of a showpiece out of that. I think that the area of land affected is across 3 parcels of land with about 23 acres, and is zoned farming. There are no residents on that area, so there's no one there at this point in time that trail would affect. So whereas the other proposed opponent, the trail will go quite close to their property and affect their amenity, and the amenity as proposed is somewhere into the future, and there's nothing there that says this is what is going to happen on. There is nothing before council to say that this is what will happen at all. It's a proposal. I understand that their father, Mr. Fletcher, was a you know, mountain cattleman, etc., and we've seen evidence of that. However, I think looking at it into the future and what is best, in my view, for the whole of the project is that the trail goes as where it is proposed. We've had extensive talks with the Indigenous people. They are happy with that path. and we need to get on with this project. It's been going on for quite some time. And in actual fact, I think a trail like that going past your property that is properly aligned and you've got a new fence out of it, if should that be the outcome, with some screening there, would only enhance the value of your property rather than anything else. And in that, it wouldn't restrict the access to the river or that crown land, and it is crown land. We must be quite aware of that. Put a couple of gates in there that you can get out of your land and go down to the river and come back and close the gate, keep your cattle in. I think that's just a win-win situation myself. And I think overall, that's the best alignment for the trail.
Thanks, Councillor Janus. Any other comments by councillors? No. I'll go back to Councillor Keeble if you needed to wrap up anything there. You're on mute.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Thank you. Other than just reading that the Tangerang are supportive of the current path, I just wanted to clarify that was the case.
Director of Assets, Mr. Jeremy.
That is the case. I can confirm that. So we've had the Tangerang elders out along the entire length of the proposed alignment, and they're very supportive. They're particularly supportive of sections that bring it close to the river for the same motivation as Delp and Necma, the opportunity that brings to reconnect with those sections along the river and potential for improvements along those areas.
Thank you.
No, nothing further to add.
Thank you. In that case, I'm going to put this recommendation to the vote. Those in favour of the current recommendation? Thank you. That has been carried. Right. Item 8.2, Director of Commercial Ruth Kneebone. Procurement policy. Now we're into council business. Thank you, Ms. Kneebone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I've got a series of administrative reports, really. Under the Local Government Act, council must review its procurement policy every year, and council officers have reviewed the policy to ensure that it best supports council's purchasing needs and that it's clear and easy to understand. So we've undertaken quite a thorough analysis of spending patterns and then balanced the efficiency of the controls against the appropriate internal measures. The outcome of the review is that 2 thresholds have been increased and that no other change be made to the control requirements. So the proposed policy has also been reviewed by Council's Audit and Risk Committee and its Finance Committee. And under the Local Government Act, Council is also required to review its procurement policy again by December 2020 because we have a new Local Government Act. So any further requirements can be made at that point. The recommendations on page 19, and that is that Council notes the 2021 review of the procurement policy number 89 has been completed, that it revokes its previous procurement policy, version 7, and that it adopts the Alpine Shire procurement policy, version 8, and signs and seals the procurement policy at the appropriate time of the meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Kneebone. Mover and seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Vincent. And a seconder, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No comment.
Excellent. Councillor Nicholas.
I have a question. Under the Local Government 2020 Act, how often does the procurement policy need to be reviewed?
I think it's annually as well, but the timing is moved out. So we've got, it'll go to December.
Great. Thank you.
Good. Any other comment? Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And it's good to get these operational policies all tidied up, and procurement's really important. The current threshold one, I'm just looking at figure 1, is up to $1,000, and that does not require a purchase order. Just explain to me how that works, knowing that there are, valuable items of under $1,000, drills and the like, and how that works with procurement.
So we've not had that. We've not had that requirement prior. There's no change to that requirement, Councillor Keeble. So what it means is that an officer is able to initiate the purchase of an item without a second authoriser, but that officer is also required to seek at least one quote and receive that quote. So whilst the procurement doesn't require a second officer involvement at the time, every officer or an officer is entitled within their delegations to undertake that purchase. So there's still the delegations that operate, and if anything, we've made these thresholds match the delegations. So officers are still required to work within the limits of their delegations. So not everyone is able to raise or undertake a purchase within council's delegations.
Thank you. Just the question, Councillor Keeble.
Answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a question. Actually, it's either for Ms. Nebo or for Mr. Jeremy, and that is items under $1,000. Sorry, at what level do you start actually recording if you're purchasing things like drills, chainsaws, lawnmowers, what have you? At what level of price do you start recording them in an assets register?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can take that one. $300 is the answer. So we record in the asset register anything $300 and above, and below $300 we don't record it.
Thank you. So this would cover off on a lot of those things up to the $1,000. Good. And then we've got a record of it somewhere. Thank you. Any other councillors like to make comment on this? No. Thank you. Councillor Vincent, anything to add? No. Thank you. Can I put this one to the vote, please? All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. 8.2.2 Instruments of Appointment and Authorisations Planning in the Environment Act 1987. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is an administrative one which has been brought about by changes to people in the planning department. Council has engaged a new manager, planning and amenity, and welcome to you, James, if you're watching. Also, the Director of Commercial, myself, has taken over interim responsibility for the planning and amenity unit as well. So this report requests also the revocation of authorisations of the previous officers, being the Director Corporate, and also for a planning officer who will be resigning on the 2nd of September and the 2nd of July, respectively. The recommendation is on page 22 and requests Council to exercise the powers conferred by Section 147 of the Planning and Environment Act, so that the members of Council staff on the related attachments are authorised and appointed appropriately in the instruments, and that the instruments come into force immediately upon the Common Seal of Council, and that the Director Corporate and the Planning Officer who have resigned, that their authorisations be revoked.
I'll move that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. A seconder, please. Councillor Chalwell. Thank you. Councillor Janus.
No, not much to say. This is just good housekeeping, really, and ebb and flow of staff in these areas. We have to have the proper governance things in place, and this just brings that to the fore. We've had these before and we'll continue to get them.
Thank you. Councillor Chalwell.
No further comment. Thank you.
All right. Any other councillors like to make comment on this? No, I'll make one comment, and that is that I'm assuming, because the recommendation is naming the Director of Commercial, and the Director of Commercial will not be a title for very long, that this will come before council again. Can you confirm this, Mr. Bird, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. When Ruth leaves us, as she's helped us out on an interim basis, the role will be replaced with the Director of Corporate Performance. And from that point, we'll bring some more documentation to council for their approval for these authorisations.
Thank you. Is there a lag time with these things where things are not working or not?
We will have people in place to serve that purpose. This just gives us greater coverage.
Thank you. Councillor Janus, anything further?
No, I'll wait for the next report to come.
Okay.
I suppose.
Yep. Could I put the recommendation of the councillors, please? Those in favour? Thank you. That's been carried. 8.2.3, Quarterly Performance Report, Council Plan. Thank you, Ms. Kneebone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report provides the third quarter update on the 2021 Alpine Shire Council Plan, 2017 to 2021, which was reviewed in 2020. So this is our old council plan and we're just working on our new one now. By reporting quarterly, council ensures that the progress against the council plan is on schedule and that actions and indicators are maintained as priorities throughout the year. So key highlights in this particular report include some very good additional funding for signature projects announced in February, and that being the Great Alpine High Country connectivity projects of the Dargo High Plains Road upgrade, which will receive $2.6 million, and the Gateway to Alpine Adventure Dinner Plane Activation Project, which will receive $2 million. And they're included in next year's budgets. Council commenced community consultation that will contribute to the development of the community vision and council plan. So that's the council plan that this new council will work to. And also the Victorian Parliament announced that a regional sitting of its legislative council would take place in Bright during April, and it did, which was a very big success. On the infrastructure side, the completion of the Buckland Bridge was a highlight for Q3, and the upgraded bridge will provide access to critical firefighting and emergency response vehicles. The recommendation is that Council receives and notes the Alpine Shire Council Plan Quarterly Performance Report ending 31st of March 2021.
A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Keeble, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Keeble.
Lots of highlights in the last quarter, some significant funding there as announced. My question is, new councils, we started in late November, early December. We have a community process that is different to the previous community processes of the previous years in regards to getting out a council plan. And my question is, when will the next council plan, when will it come to councillors, and when will we start putting input, and when do we expect to sign off on that plan? Is there a timeline?
I can answer that. Yes, so the first draft will come to council on the 18th of June, and councillors will have about nearly 2 weeks to read and comment back to the authors, and then they will adjust the plan. It will go out for design for 2 weeks. Then it'll come back to councillors for their further input on the design, and then they will adopt, council will adopt, if they're happy with it, a draft council plan, which will then go out for community consultation. And it will be adopted at the council meeting in October.
Thank you. So, okay, that sounds great. Much appreciated.
Councillor Nicholas.
I always like to see the quarterly performance reports because it showcases the incredible work that is achieved in the Alpine Shire for local communities, and this is no exception. Even though we've had such dreadful harsh times and hard working conditions, or hard for some anyway. I know some people like working at home. So all of this couldn't have happened without really good background from both the Alpine Shire staff and community members. And I commend everybody for that. I think it's just, we just keep kicking goals. I think it's great.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Any other councillors like to make comments regarding this? No. Councillor Janice.
Of course.
You have I'll give you 2 minutes, Councillor Janice.
That is my allocated time in general, Mr. Mayor.
Good.
I want to just comment on the Great Alpine connectivity road there with the Dargo High Plains. Just something that you know, we've been trying to get for some time now, many years, working with different governments. And I've driven that road reasonably recently, and I wasn't aware how far that area of responsibility is for us along that track. And I actually really question, is it actually our road to be maintaining in the long term, and should another government department be looking at it? But nevertheless, that in the bushfires, that particular road proved its value to us, and I thank the government for giving us that money to maintain it and upgrade it. And I know that the Wellington Shire certainly is grateful that work is done, and adds to our visitation as well for tourism in the area. And it's a great piece of country up there, great piece of Australia. If you ever get the time to go and have a drive, people, go and have a drive and have a pie at the Dargo pub.
Thanks, Councillor Janice. And I'm glad that you've put that on record regarding whose road it is. Any other councillors like to make comment? No? I'll go back to Councillor Keeble. Any final comments? No? Can I put this to the vote, please? The recommendation. Those in favour? Thank you. That's been carried. 8.2.4, the Finance Report Quarterly Review. Thank you again, Ms. Nebo.
So like the previous report, this one relates to Council's financial performance for the last quarter, and Council is forecasting a full year surplus of $5.1 million, which is $2.8 million higher than the budgeted surplus of 2.3. And the main driver of the forecasted increase in the surplus is additional grant income received of $4.2 million. And I'll leave you to read the other variances and comments noted in the report. So the recommendation is on page 28, that Council receives and notes the Finance Report Quarterly Review for the period ending 31 March 2021.
Thank you. A mover and a seconder. Councillor Nicholas, Councillor Vincent. Councillor Nicholas.
Ms. Kneebone, I can't see anywhere in the report the working capital ratio. Could you tell me what that is, please?
4.3.
Thank you. And to me,
I'll
that's
just have a look, Councillor Nicholas.
Yeah, I thought it dropped from where it has been. Anyway, 4.3. And while you're looking, the reason I asked that is because I believe that's a far better indication of our solvency and our capacity to function well than surplus, because surplus is often committed.
Yes, that's correct. So I can take that on notice and provide the working capital ratio in future reports.
That'd be lovely. Thank you.
Certainly.
Good. Thank you. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one comment from me, and it's a very similar report to the previous quarter, but I would like to publicly acknowledge the Director of Assets work and the team in ongoing securing of funding, which is, to my understanding, non-recurrent grant funding for projects in our region, which will just be of such benefit to our residents and our community for a really long period of time into the future. So yes, the numbers sound incredibly healthy, which is fantastic, but yeah, an understanding that that is committed funds for projects to come over several years, and just well done to the team for continuing to deliver.
Here.
Hear, hear, Councillor Vincent. Yes. Any other comments from councillors? No, thank you. Can I put this recommendation to the vote then? Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. Eight 8.2.5, information privacy policy. Again, Ms. Kneebone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next two reports relate to policies. For the information privacy policy, council officers have been undertaking a comprehensive review of all of council policies. In relation to this one, in 2019, the Office of Victorian Information Commissioner, OVIC, reviewed privacy policies across the local government sector and recommended that councils regularly review their privacy policies to ensure that they're written in plain English and that clear processes are described for accessing and correcting personal information and for making a privacy complaint. So to that end, council engaged some external assistance in reviewing its privacy policy, and we also benchmarked it against other councils' policies. And we believe we've improved the terminology and made two key additions, and that is the commitment to ongoing staff training and also adding the process for making a privacy complaint. The recommendation is on page 31, and that is that council adopts the information privacy policy number 45, that it revokes the previous policy, version 2, and that it signs and seals the information privacy policy at the appropriate stage of the meeting.
A mover and a seconder. Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Prime. Councillor Nicholas.
Privacy is really important in this age of surveillance capitalism, and I think it's great that we're keeping in touch with everything that we need to do to maintain our privacy and people's privacy.
Thank you. Councillor Prime.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Nicholas. Bit of housekeeping here, but at the same time, extremely important and maintaining privacy. So happy with that one.
Any other councillors like to make comment? Councillor Keeble.
Thanks. It's possibly a question to the CEO. Privacy, as Councillor Nicholas was saying, is very important. My question is, in this day and age, a lot of information is stored on servers and ICT equipment and whatnot. How are we, as an organisation, securing that privacy in regards to any infrastructure development or rollovers in regards to our ICT capabilities?
It's a good question. It's a big question too, Councillor Keeble. I'll respond by saying that we take very cautious and measured steps to ensure that our customers and the private details that exist within our systems are protected in our current systems and any change that we make. So, for example, we're currently migrating to a new property and rating system, and we're following the steps of another council which has just been through this recently, and we're confident that the steps we'll have in place will protect the details of our ratepayers.
So a question also to the CEO, will the council or will the Shire be requesting more information from its ratepayers?
It would be fantastic to have the email address of each of our ratepayers and residents in the Alpine Shire. That would give us the opportunity to effectively communicate on specific matters and on a targeted basis as well. So we already have email addresses for many of our community members, and I anticipate that at some stage we will be endeavouring to capture more.
Thank you for that answer. Excellent. Any other comment from councillors? No, thank you. Councillor Nicholas, nothing more? No, thank you. I'll put this recommendation to the vote then, please. Those in favour? Thank you. We have a majority. That has been carried. 8.2.6, the revocation and amendments of policies. Again, Ms Kneebone, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, so in addition to the previous report, the Local Government Act 2020 requires Council to adopt financial policies that give effect to the financial management principles in the Local Government Act. This report relates to policies for property, plant and equipment. The current policy is out of date and requires revocation. In fact, it was adopted in 2005. So the review of this policy has commenced with 3 replacement policies ready for CEO signature. Those 3 policies are assets held for sale, intangible assets and investment property policy. Further replacement policies will be prepared in accordance with the Act prior to the 31st of December 2021. So additionally, the recommendation requires Council to consent to a renumbering of a previous policy that it adopted at its meeting in April. And we just found that we had a duplication in numbers, and that was for the councillor gift policy. So the recommendation is that we revoke the previous accounting policy and that we renumber the councillor gift policy.
Thank you. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Janus and Councillor Prime. Thank you. Councillor Janus, any comments?
No, thanks. Just once again, it's just governance and housekeeping.
Thank you. Councillor Prime.
No, thanks. This is a pretty straightforward one.
Thank you. Does anybody have any comments or objections? No, thank you. I'll put this to the vote. The recommendation as read. Those in favour? Thank you. That's been carried. 8.2.7, planning application, group accommodation, Toowoomba Gap Road. I believe Councillor Chalwell has a conflict of interest here. Could Mr Bird please remove Councillor Chalwell from the meeting for a period of time only? Thank you. Right, Councillor, Ms Kneebone.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This application involves the use and buildings and works for group accommodation and alterations of access to a road in a road zone category 1. So it proposes 2 cabins of identical design with each having a single carport, among other things, and also the extension of the existing vehicle access, which connects the Toowoomba Gap Road, is proposed to provide vehicle access to the carports associated with each cabin. A permit is required because the land is located in the farming zone. The development is subject to a bushfire management overlay, and it seeks to alter access to a road in a road zone category. Notice of the application was sent to surrounding landholders and occupiers, and 1 objection was received. An objective forum was held on the 23rd of February 2021. Appropriate referrals were made and no objections were received, subject to conditions. The recommendation is on page 38, and that is that a notice of decision to grant a planning permit be issued for use and buildings and works for group accommodation and alterations of access to a road in a road zone category 1 in accordance with the conditions outlined in the appendix and the following summarised reasons, which I won't read out, and other than to say that the proposal is compatible with adjoining and nearby land uses and has minimal potential to limit the operation and expansion of adjoining and nearby agricultural uses.
Thanks, Ms Kneeburn. Could I have a mover for this one, please? Yep, Councillor Keeble, and a seconder, Councillor Janis. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. This one, it looks like it's having a section 123 on it. Is that correct, Ms Kneeburn?
173 or 123?
173, sorry.
Yes, I believe there is. That was part of the planning forum arrangements.
And just for the public who might be listening out there or read the recording, can you just explain what the section 173 is?
Section 173 is a covenant over a piece of land that stays on that title. It's attached to the title and requires the owner of the land to do something, and it also cannot be removed unless you go to VCAT, I think. So it's a condition that imposes certain restrictions on a title of land.
Yeah, and it can be removed at VCAT at some time if it can be argued. My thank you for that. My thinking around this one is that there's possibly a lot of people out there looking at this one because it is in the farming zone. The properties are for short-term stay, and we know that we have a housing issue in many parts of Victoria and Australia and in the Alpine Shire. This sort of housing doesn't really help with that because it's a short-term stay. It's not for renting. It's for a business. It's in the farming zone. I'm not sure that it's the greatest use of the land in the farming zone, personally. So I'm interested to hear what my other councillors have to say on the matter before we vote on it. Thanks.
Councillor Janis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm in a bit of agreement there with Councillor Keeble in some of his thing, and I've made notes that I too have a concern that there are many people perhaps awaiting this decision going forward to enhance their incomes from farms. I note that it is, and I've been to the site, had a look. I was sat in on the conversation with the neighbours, with the neighbour, and note that he has that section 173 is got quite a lot of conditions in it, and going forward is also the fact that, and I've said before, people's right to farm without too much inhibition. I think without a section 173 over this area, I'd have a view that this shouldn't go ahead. And looking at the layout of the land, to me, it is, although it's zoned rural, it is sort of removed from rural. One of the concerns I had was the supply of water, and I see that in the 173 there's been a requirement from CFA to have a certain amount of water available for firefighting in this. I think we should probably take each application on its merits. So with the people have come to an arrangement, the neighbours, in relation to this, and so I will support the recommendation in having a look at the whole of the situation, but also being very cognizant of the fact that we don't want to inhibit agriculture going forward. I note on the conditions that people are only allowed to stay there for no more than 60 days within the year, which is, you know, short-term accommodation really with multiple visits. And we do have an accommodation concern, but we also need to fill a lot of beds for our tourism industry as well. This is not really what I would call a working farm or could be probably joined in another farm, but it's already had a house there for many, many years, which is quite different to some of the decisions that council have made in some other applications. So I know that this house has probably been there probably about 30 years at least, and on that section of land. So I will support the recommendation on that basis, taking it on an individual case-by-case basis.
Thank you, Councillor. Must I reiterate that it's a very good example of taking each individual case and doing a proper planning process with it. Any other councillors like to make comment on this particular one? Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To reiterate, Councillor Janice and yourself, I don't see this as precedent setting, and that's something that as a new councillor I've learned through going through this process, in that the council organisation and planning do a very comprehensive amount of work to look at each individual application. And in this particular case, whilst I acknowledge and agree with Councillor Keeple's concerns around not wanting to impact agriculture or set the wheels in motion for a huge a precedent flow on, looking at this particular case, it seems to me, I'm satisfied that we've been advised that it has been removed from agriculture because of the way it's now it remains, with the house in the centre. And yeah, so for me, I do agree with Councillor Janice that I would accept the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas.
It'd be interesting to hear other people's thoughts. I think there's more to building on farming land than just the impact on agriculture. And to me, it's about, so there's one house that's already there, and there'll be effectively 3 accommodations on a relatively small piece of land. And to me, that starts to look like strip development, or, you know, patches of higher density development than we seek over agricultural land in general. But I also can see that building more, or potentially that building more accommodation for short-term use has a potential to free up long-term accommodation somewhere else. So it's an interesting juxtaposition. It may just mean that there's more people staying here short-term. It may mean that we've got more opportunities for housing. So I guess I'm just putting forward my ideas. I haven't made a decision.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Prime, you'd like to say something?
Look, I'll wait. Just a comment. I think this just goes to show everyone the deliberation that goes into these kind of decisions and how we don't take them lightly at all. And there's a lot of contemplation over all the issues, which everyone's brought up well tonight. And I agree with Councillor Janice that without a Section 173 attached as well, it would make it a lot more difficult. But yeah, just to acknowledge to the community that we do put a lot of thought into these decisions.
Thank you. Councillor Keeble, would you like to reply?
Back to me. Yeah, they're difficult decisions.
To yourself, yes.
Yeah, they're difficult decisions, aren't they? No, I've heard the fellow councillors, and I'm really familiar with the bit of land. I drive past it often enough and ride my bike past it often enough. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, and congratulations, councillors. That was a very good conversation. I'm going to put this recommendation to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation as it stands? Okay, those against? Right, so we have a 3-3 and I'll have a casting vote on that. So those in, it will be carried. Thank you. Mr. Bird, would you like to admit Councillor Chalwell back to the meeting, please?
Sorry, I was muted. Can we have a division, please?
Certainly.
Just for fun.
We have a division. Those in favour of this, please. Councillors Janice, Councillor Vincent and Councillor Forsyth. Those against? Councillor Nicholas, Councillor Keeble and Councillor Prime. The casting vote left to the Mayor, Councillor Forsyth. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bird. CEO, Mr. Bird.
Thanks, everyone.
I apologise. I did not note when Councillor Chalwell left the meeting, but she is returning at 6:32. There's a lot of pages in that report.
Yep.
Right. Item 8.2.9, planning application 301 Buckland Valley Road. Ms. Kneebone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this might be actually 8.2.8. We don't have an 8.2.8 listed on the agenda, I've just noticed.
Okay,
that doesn't matter. This planning application is for the use and development of land for an extractive industry, stone extraction at 301 Buckland Valley Road. There is already...
If I may, sorry, Ms. Kneebone, but in there, I'd like to propose that I'd like to put a motion forward that we move this particular decision on this planning permit to either in July or August, as there's been some new information that's come about, and I'd like some extra time to look at that.
I'll second that.
Thank you. So would you like to word something for us, please, Councillor Keeble?
Could we please defer this motion to either the July or the August ordinary council meeting?
I have a seconder of Sarah Nicholas. Do I have those in favour of this motion, please? Thank you. So this planning application is being tabled until August, did you say?
Either the July or August, depending on how long it takes to go.
Could we get some indication, please? Thank you, Mr. Bird.
Can I suggest the recommendation be the August council meeting?
Thank you.
Maybe we say no later than the August council meeting, and then if it can be dealt with earlier, then we deal with it earlier.
Happy with that.
Happy with that, and happy with that, Councillor Vincent, Councillor Nicholas. Happy with that. Thank you. Those in favour? Excellent. That's been dealt with. Right, item 9, informal meetings of councillors. We have 3 noted for the 6th of May, the 11th of May was a planning forum on the 18th of May, which is a briefing session. The recommendation is that a summary of informal meetings of councillors for May 2021 be received. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Janis, seconder. Councillor Chalwell. I don't think there's any comment on this. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. Item 10, general business, starting with Councillor Chalwell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My biggest thing is obviously with the snap lockdown, 7 days, which has come at us again. We're back to COVID learning. You know, there are great things about this. We get to spend some time with family, but we do acknowledge that this can be a really tough time for people working, the home front and the juggling life of all these different balls in the air. So I know that there are many different avenues that people can reach out to if they need. There is support. Ask questions, talk to people. I know that there's definitely some information on the Alpine Shire Council Facebook page that was put up towards the end of last week with different activities that you can do with the kids and learning things, but also support lines, so Lifeline, Kids Helpline, Are You OK, Beyond Blue, and those type of things. And don't be ashamed to call it and what it is, and you know, put your hand up and say, I'm not coping, because I think that's your first step to getting the help that's required to get through it. So big shout out to everybody that's having to adapt, teachers, parents, children, workforces. It's affecting everybody. But I feel like every time we do it, we're getting that little bit better at it. So keep it up. It's, you know, it won't be forever, but if we all do the right thing, then we'll hopefully come out the other side unscathed.
Thank you. Councillor Prime.
No, none from me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Certainly. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one point, which I think is exacerbated by COVID, but I have been speaking to our local wildlife rescuers, and there has been a huge amount of road tolls of wildlife at the moment for whatever reason or another. So just in the interest of public safety and also the animal safety, just please, yeah, if you're on the road, especially dawn and dusk, there's less people on the road, and it seems that the animals are coming out into those spaces more. And please, the other point to that is, if you do hit an animal, just to report it, Wildlife Victoria or the local wildlife shelter, because there are people really eager to get out there and either euthanize or, you know, rescue that animal. And yeah, or if it's safe to do so yourself, to just move that animal off the road if it is deceased, and you can still report it. But that's all from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Vincent. Councillor Janis.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to reiterate what Councillor Chalwell has said. Very important now that we're in our fourth lockdown, and it is affecting different people in different ways. We are a friendly community, a friendly shire. Let's just make that little bit of extra effort. If you're seeing someone along the street or along a trail, say hello, nod, wave, whatever you can do under your mask. But yeah, a positive interaction with people, and it just does go such a long way. And, you know, simple little things saying, you know, look, when we're dealing with our staff or staff at the local Woolworths, Coles, IGA, whatever it is, you know, just they're doing it tough too. So, and they're working under hard conditions, and, you know, they don't need to argue with people who are despondent all the time. So, yeah, let's keep it friendly.
Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I reiterate what Councillor Janis and Councillor Chalwell were saying. It's the fourth time. I like the fact that in this particular one there is a, you know, you can go and visit, have one other bubble with one other person, and hopefully people have been doing that this time, that they've been if they do live alone, or if they know someone who lives alone, to go and spend some time with them, as you're allowed to. And also I will note that I think our whole community, that is the whole of Victoria, have got better in understanding the importance of what we need to do in a lockdown, because I note that there weren't many people here on the weekend, unlike last year when we had our first and second lockdowns. There were a lot of people from larger towns coming into smaller towns to escape. I don't think that happened much at all this weekend. So I'd like to thank everyone for doing the right thing. That was terrific. And a shout out to Councillor Prime. All the best in the next month. We're looking forward to some lovely photos. So good luck with it all.
I will I will concur with you on that one, definitely, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Nicholas.
Nothing to add. I think the COVID lockdown overwhelms us in some ways, and we need to do our best with it, all of us. Excellent,
thank you. Item 11, motions for which notice is previously given, none tonight. Reception and reading of petitions, item 12, I don't think we have any. Documents for sealing, item 13. A quick question for Mr. Bird on this one. Signing at the appropriate part of the meeting is usually at the end of the meeting. With these documents, can these be signed with electronic signatures, or do you require physical signatures on these?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These can be signed electronic. However, they can also be signed at a later date.
Right.
So I suspect it's up to the councils which they choose to do. I hope we're in person again shortly, and that would present an opportune time to do the signing.
Excellent. I was just bearing that in mind, with the fact that if you needed them signed quickly, perhaps councillors from the Bright area might wish to move and second this. However, I won't preempt anybody on this one. So documents for sealing, there's a recommendation there for 8 documents to seal. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Nicholas and Councillor Vincent, thank you very much. Those in favour? Thank you. Carried. And
Mr. Mayor?
Certainly.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, if I may butt in, just in regards to, can I do a shout out to my wife who's listening to us live stream up in Nullumboy in Northern Territory?
Certainly. That's a bit of general business. What's the
general
time
business?
There? What's the time up there? Half an hour earlier?
Yeah, I think it's like, must be about 6:15.
Right. Okay. Thank you for giving me that time, because I will declare the meeting closed now at 6:43. Thank you very much, councillors.